Hi, I'm Samantha Shorey, and I'm an assistant professor at the University of Texas at Austin. I'm presenting Crafting Everyday Resistance Through Lightweight Design on behalf of my co-authors, Sarah Fox, Franchesca Spektor, and Daniela Rosner. In this pictorial, we introduce the concept of lightweight design interactions, which encourage us as design researchers to look beyond the bold creation of alternatives or new design artifacts to the subtle nurturing of the circumstances that make alternatives possible. Notably, we describe in this pictorial something that took place 3 years ago against a particular political and cultural backdrop. In some ways, it is a reflection from that time, but in other ways, we can see it as carrying through particular sensitivities and relationships, as well as providing a way for thinking about design communities differently. Thinking about them as invested, responsible to, embedded in, and resources for larger social movements. This way of thinking calls on scholars to mobilize with the materials and practices at hand within professional or academic communities. These systems feature the raw material for undoing and dismantling work. This pictorial sets out to be a kind of path in for talking about such activities as legitimate and necessary to design. In this pictorial, we illustrate our own process of creating lightweight design interactions, emerging out of an effort to collectively produce electronic posters and buttons. In reflecting on that process here, we hold on to the way that design practice might work as a modest, partial, and incremental shift in the circumstances through which design futures unfold. Our pictorial takes the visual form of a zine to discuss the development of protest materials as they entwine with design practices. For more than a century, hand-drawn and staple-bound self-published magazines, or zines, have been used by activists to share their ideas beyond the gatekeeping of professional publishing. The handmade aesthetics of zines emphasize the connection between creators and their products in a way that the slickness of commercial media often conceals. This format helped us to make visible the work of transforming design culture and the potential of design to participate in that transformation. Across its pages, we recall building instruments of protest with members of our community and name a particular approach to building that we call lightweight design interactions. These interactions are lightweight across multiple dimensions. Literally, the materials have little heft or weight. They are things such as paper, tape, and fabric. Figuratively, the materials are lightweight in their preparation, in that they are readily available and inexpensive. They are lightweight in their assembly, in that they are easily drawn together. And they are lightweight in the skills required to use them, in that they can be effective with no prior technical knowledge or expertise. In lightweight design interactions, participants engage the tactics of design in pursuit of outcomes that might not take the form of lasting design artifacts. Rather, they may nurture the social circumstances that make alternatives possible, especially alternatives in the circumstances where one is embedded. In our case, those circumstances are academic design communities. Nurturing alternatives here meant creating intermittent and sometimes imperceptible changes that augmented or contended with existing structures. We acted within departments and labs that prize creation and innovation to become inventive in the way suggested by feminist scholar Sarah Ahmed, through claiming space, time, and materials for speaking out. Through bringing our attention to our everyday environments, we can begin to see the potentials for change that are sedimented in the social processes of ordinary life, or what we refer to as quotidian politics. This work draws on scholarship within HCI that recognizes the mundane and often invisible forms of daily creativity that are aspects of design, as well as the legacy of political movements such as the welfare rights movement or the Wages for Housework campaign, which position everyday domestic labor as a site for political struggle. In doing so, we take up Sasha Costanza-Chalk's call to acknowledge the importance of everyday vernacular and often unrecognized design practices. Our project also drew on craft modalities in the making of our objects of protest. Craft modalities bring intimacy, conversation, and reflection into the creative process. For example, the Yarn Mission project led by Kiona Sewell and Taylor Payne, uses knitting in public space to spark conversations between strangers about racial profiling and police brutality. Our pictorial traces 4 events, each of which illustrate a particular aspect of lightweight design. Today, we're going to zoom in on 2 of them. First, lightweight preparation. How does lightweightness in design work as a means of political action beyond things? Lightweightness asks us to quickly draw on the everyday resources that surround us, and often those resources are people and relationships. As it happened, we witnessed an example of this lightweight preparation as our campus responded to verbal and physical violence after a campus visit from alt-right extremist Milo Yiannopoulos. Prior to his visit, members of the campus community feared Yiannopoulos' speaking engagement would legitimize and encourage political views deemed repulsive. For example, on a far-right commentary website, Yiannopoulos called for a cap on women enrolling in science majors due to the leaky pipeline. In response, a member of our community worked with professors in the computer science and engineering department to prepare a familiar organizational form as a lightweight means of resistance, the academic panel. Scheduled for the afternoon preceding Yiannopoulos' talk, the panel consisted of 9 women working in science to challenge the idea that women aren't contributors to scientific fields. Women are there even when they aren't called on, cited, tenured, or listened to. The panel instantiated a lived counter-argument. Notably, according to a panelist, 2 male professors in the computer science department did much of the preparation for this event. This is precisely the sort of service work that is often shouldered by those already marginalized within academia. But in this case, a subtle but powerful inversion meant sourcing and elevating the knowledge of those whom Yiannopoulos and his followers argued shouldn't be present at all. In our 4th engagement, we held a button-making session on the campus makerspace. We gathered our materials and the community together again to think deeply about the possibilities and the limits of our activities to address structural oppression. Workshop attendees used stacks of vintage magazines, glue sticks, scissors, and felt-tip pens to express commentary and commitments. The intricate and original images they created were pressed into buttons by a group of participants who collected around an analog button press. Once pressed, attendees added circuitry and made images with copper tape and LED stickers to their buttons as another layer of collage. The workshop leveraged lightweight skills by drawing together paper-based craft and basic electronics, presenting them as sharing the same underlying practice, collage. Skills for creative expression and skills for technology were entwined to become skills for resistance. Joni, a medical student and activist, created a button in which a cloaked woman peered out from behind 2 drapes she'd created from scraps. At the end of the workshop, Joni described her ambivalent relationship to softness symbolized through the fabric in both lines of her work. As Joni's story illustrates, creating the materials of dissent can create opportunities for reflection and considering one's stance. Rather than seeking immediate solutions, the lightweight design interaction was a means to sit with the contradictions and challenges that are present in the intersecting experiences of being a woman, a worker, an activist, and a caretaker. As these reflections on our workshops illustrate, gathering together to make objects of public protest becomes a pathway for conversation and solidarity. The technical concepts engaged in the design process may have been lightweight, but in the acts of joint creation, we thought deeply with one another. We built new connections and introduced subtle frictions into a political progression in our immediate environment that may have continued unquestioned. Across these engagements, we came to see that our knowledge, our colleagues, and the materials living in the back of lab cabinets all continue to be resources for reshaping our academic design communities. With this abundance comes a responsibility to respond with what we have at hand to, in the words of Assad et al., become academic accomplices. As a call to action, here are a few ideas to act in the spirit of this pictorial right here and right now. You might take the open letter authored by the Black in Computing Collective to your department heads and campus administrators demanding the implementation of the immensely clear action items listed there. Or you might also gather your voice with others in the SIGCHI community, pushing the ACM to respond to repeated reports of institutional racism and ableism from our colleagues and peers. Let us continue to make the firm steps to build the conditions in which more just futures can take hold.